Why is space now so important in modern warfare?
Yeah, I think what's happened is it's kind of a historic trend that you would see across the globe, where space has become such a key part of everything we do, whether it's public, whether it's the military. It's just a key part, and because of that, you have to protect those capabilities, and that's why it's become part of warfare. I think if you look historically, we've used space to support, for terrestrial activities here on Earth. Now we're using space for activities in space. So it's changed the dynamic. It's a domain that continues to grow, and I think it's an area that every nation is looking at. It's a global trend we're seeing.
So as part of this global trend, Lockheed Martin are involved in the UK's plan to build this so-called integrated airspace and missile defence operations centre in the coming years. Is there a risk with these kinds of new big projects that the technology becomes redundant as it's being developed because there is such a pace of change in the sector?
I think we just have to stay on the front end of the leading edge of that at all times. That's kind of what we do in every part of our technology that we have. Lockheed Martin, we're constantly evolving the tech, and we on-ramp it into the systems that we need, whether they're in space or whether they're here on Earth. And so I think that's just the way we have to do business in the future, because tech is changing quickly, and how do we adapt it, and how do we make sure that our systems have what we call modular open system architecture, so you can bring those new capabilities in when you need them.
What does the new Burnham government need to do in Britain to regain credibility for the UK that's been criticised by various people in terms of military spending? And the DIP, the Defence Investment Plan, has talked about access to operating in, from and through space to underpinning UK security. What does the new Burnham government have to do to deliver that?
I think it's just like everyone else. They have to look at space as a strategic domain. And how space plays out to all the systems that they have here terrestrially, but also as we look at how we're going to use space as a warfighting domain in the future. And I think that's the same as everyone else is doing across the globe, and just continue to focus on that as we move forward.
Okay, in terms of delivering on the money, there is this, it's still not really understood whether the UK is going to be able to deliver 3% of GDP spending on defence by 2030 and 3.5% by 2035. What happens if it doesn't do that? What does it mean for Lockheed?
Well, I think for us, we're here. We've been in the UK for 85 years. We're going to be here as long as we can. The UK is a great partner for us. We help them strategically across multiple domains, not just space. And I think, we're going to be a supporter and be part of this team because UK is a strategic partner for us, and frankly for all the world in terms of the capabilities that they do have here that they can bring forward.
I want to talk a bit about the global supply chains on defence here, Robert. Space is such a big endeavour, and in its many ways you have to be a big player to get the kind of kit, to get the kind of dominance that you want in it. How much of a threat is it to your business, the EU's kind of made in Europe push? Europe seems to be giving the signal that it wants to be moving away from US defence companies and more towards building its own personal, independent kind of projects. Is that going to change how you do business?
I think for us, the key is everybody needs a global supply chain, and so for us, whether we're supporting countries or companies in Europe and the UK, or whether we're being supported by that, the more they can get into this defense industrial base, the better off we're going to be. I think we saw during COVID how fragile the industrial base is for defense and aerospace, and now the more they come to that opportunity, the better off we're all going to be. So I don't see it affecting us other than maybe helping us actually deliver the missions and the systems that we need to deliver.
How do you see space-based espionage developing? We've seen this as a kind of new area of warfare from NATO's perspective, particularly on the eastern flank in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. How do you see space-based espionage at the minute?
Well, here's the way I'll answer that. If you look at history, just in general, I think what you'll find is what's happening in space is no different than what's happened terrestrially for forever. Things start with exploration. You explore. You find a reason to push your limits out. Think about the West Indies and spices. In the U.S., think about going from one end of the country to the gold rush on the West Coast. Space is the same way. You explore, You find something when you explore that that provides a commercial opportunity, a business opportunity, and then of course that creates conflict. And the conflict requires us to actually pay attention whether it's defensive opportunities, offensive opportunities, or even, as you said, espionage. I mean, that's the history of the world. It's happened that way. And I think, to me, that's what we're seeing in space. It's just now becoming a more important domain to all of us every day. And I think all those things are going to continue to happen. And that's why we have the systems that we have, and that's how we try to protect those systems as we move forward.
Well, like you say, there's exploration, there's innovation, and there is so much innovation in the space right now. But then there's security. Ukraine, for example, is so reliant on these Starlink systems, but Bloomberg's been reporting on their susceptibility to Chinese spies. How do you make this new kit reliable and secure?
Well, you continue to work on your cybersecurity. All the systems that we put in place have to have the protections in place. Again, this is something we didn't worry about 20, 30 years ago when we put systems in space. And now, again, because it's become a contested domain, these are the kind of systems we have to put in place to protect them. We have a lot of cyber capabilities. We have a lot of other capabilities on the ground that allow us to do that. So, again, it's no different than the terrestrial or the Earth's systems that we deal with on a daily basis. It's just in space, and so it's a little more complicated maybe than what we're used to.